What is up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today I have tried a different setup. I'm downstairs out of the studio and I just wanted to open things up a bit. I was getting a little bit bored of the top-down video style of filming, so let me know what you think about this style of video. I haven't had my face in the videos for ages apart from on my thumbnails, so I thought I'd reintroduce myself back into the channel. And I actually really dig this setup, so let me know what you think in the comments. Should I carry on filming like this? Well, I guess you might have to watch the video first to find out if it's a nice setup, but hopefully you dig it. So yeah, moving forward, I'd like to do more videos in this style, and I quite like the way that things are set up now. My girlfriend actually picked up this little ottoman this weekend, and this has ended up being the perfect stand for my SP here. So yeah, the whole aesthetic has come together quite nicely because my girlfriend bought this ottoman. So yeah, let's get into this video. I just wanted to talk about the SP, obviously, and talk about limitations and a kind of realization that I've had over the past couple of months. And really, it's been since I did the video saying that I wanted to start moving things into a DAW and using that more to complement the beat making workflow. Well, since then really, I've realized something, and it has a lot to do with the kind of personality that I have. And I think one of the things which is really annoying about myself personally, and I'm sure a lot of you out there can sympathize with this as well, I'm just obsessed with trying to make the perfect beat, and it's quite a toxic thing to have to deal with because it's very, very detrimental. I mean, what is the perfect beat? It doesn't exist, does it? So that's one of the problems which I've been dealing with quite a lot with myself over the past, well, ever since I've done anything creative really, is that I think us creatives are really good at beating ourselves up about our own work. And I think this is where the SP, it really does kind of come into its own, because as I was saying, I did a lot of stuff where I was exporting beats and finishing them in Ableton, but I started to realize that, it becomes cumbersome, the whole workflow. It's becoming bloated and over the top. You can do things inside this box, and I think, to be honest, one of the main things that got me excited about using the SP again, and I've been making some beats on it again recently, was finding that bus workflow that I did a video about. I'll link to it in the top corner. I think it should be that side. Basically, I worked out my bus workflow, and now I just stick to that bus workflow. Now, obviously, in a DAW like Ableton, like I use, you can route anything to any bus. You can put any effect on any channel. It gets a bit ridiculous and bloated. I think, just having this fixed idea of how the buses work, it's limiting. Yeah, sure, it's a limitation, but it means the decision is made for me. And that's really important because I can just push forward with the rest of the beat making process. So for example here, I will just go through this briefly, very quickly again, but I have got a whole video about this. So on bus 1, that is usually just affecting the samples that I have, not the drums, just the samples. So I'll put an effect on the samples. Here I've got Crusher. Should be able to hear that, or I could change that to 404 vinyl sim, or warm saturator, I think is another good one. So there's loads of options for putting on my samples there. I'll only apply an effect to the samples just to give the beat a bit of flavour. Then with bus 2, I use that for live jamming effects. So I keep that bus free, and the way that I do that is this setup here. Have it on type A. So it'll affect the samples. I can play live effects over the top in that particular bus channel or lane. And then on 3 and 4, I just have 2 compressors. Now, I've just figured out that this adds so much beef to my beats. And like I said, I don't want to go into this too much, but those 2 compressors on 3 and 4 are just all the time on the type of beats that I'm making at the moment. And then basically I just vary what's on bus 1 and then use bus 2 to jam effects when I'm recording out. So that side of my workflow now is completely sorted. Whereas if I was in Ableton, I'd be thinking, oh, I need to drop an EQ on the snare, I need to drop an EQ on the sample, I need to do this, I need to do that. It just makes things way too complicated. It strings out the beat making process, and basically it just means that I'd never end up finishing anything because it almost feels a bit overwhelming. There's too much that you can do to a beat. So having these limitations, to me personally and my personality, have been really, really useful. But it's only over the last sort of couple of weeks, couple of months that I've really began to appreciate why they're so useful. I used to find limitations annoying and like a hindrance, but now I'm starting to realize that it just means that I don't need to make a decision about it, so I can just move on and start the next phase of the beat. So let's try and think of another example here. I think one of them is definitely, let's say, for example, the amount of sequences that I create for a beat. In a DAW, you can make an unbelievable amount of sequences. You know, you can make infinite sequences if you wanted to, infinite variations. You could be there forever trying to make the perfect sequence, the perfect beat with the perfect combination of sequences. On the SP, because it's not that easy to do, I mean, it's not hard, but it's more complicated than doing it inside a DAW or DAW. It means that you just create less of them. Well, for me personally, I find that I create less of them, and I think that's where the side of it comes in, where you have to learn to be content with certain things. So a lot of the beats here, you know, this beat in particular, I've only got 2 patterns at the moment. Maybe I'll add 1 or 2 more variations. So let's say an intro, a verse, or a hook, a variation on the samples, and then maybe a variation on the drums. That's definitely going to be enough to fill 1 to 2 minutes for a beat, as well as the live effects on the top as well. Whereas if I was in a DAW, I'd be thinking, well, I need to do a variation, I need to change it up in the middle, I need to add 3 or 4 drum variations. All gets a bit out of hand, I think. So again, that's another example of how the limitations on this device have been really helpful to me, because they're making decisions for me, maybe because I can't physically do them, or because they're too much work, and therefore I just cut everything back. One more example that I've got is probably like the time stretching on the SP. Now, you know, a lot of people moan about the time stretching on the SP. I love it. I think it's rubbish, but I love it. And that's another thing with this device, that I think you just have to fully embrace it to really, really enjoy it. And that's why I'm getting to a point with it now where I just feel like every time I sit down and make a beat on this, sometimes those little frustrations start to creep in, where you're like, oh, this would be so easy in Ableton just to do this. It's like, doesn't matter, like, just forget it, just don't do it then. And that's made the journey a lot more fun for me. So yeah, time stretching, you can hear on these samples, hopefully. Let me try and choose one which is quite obvious.
A few moments later.
Okay, I had to do a little bit of looking through there, but I found a good example now. I think this is a Marvin Gaye sample, and you can hear on a couple of the samples that there's a bit of like this weird wobble to them because of the way that I've changed the speed on them. And yeah, sure, I could have done that better in Ableton. I could have used a plugin, time stretched it, made it all sound perfect. But again, it's just extra bloat on the workflow. And as I'm trying to say here, with my personality, that's going to be another way I can get distracted. It's going to be another way I can make an excuse to not like the beat. So I ended up just saying to myself, well, you know what? Yeah, it sounds a bit wobbly, it sounds a bit off, but it gives it a bit of character. So, you know, you could mask some of that with the effects. So say, for example, on bus 1, I'm going to go ahead and do 404 vinyl sim. Starting to get that really lo-fi sound now, sounding really gritty. But when we combine that with the rest of the beat, you know, I think it's got a bit of a character about it. It sounds like an SP beat. I kind of dig it, even though it's not perfect. You could make it more perfect than a DAW, but I don't know, I kind of like it. So I hope what I'm trying to say here, guys, is coming across as I intend. You'll hear a lot of people talk about limitations on the SP and say, you know, it's kind of fun because it's like a puzzle. It's like a puzzle making a beat, and it just makes you think a little bit more. Definitely true. I definitely agree with that as well. But for me personally, having those limitations to help me push myself through the workflow, to stop myself trying to find stumbling blocks, and just to eliminate a lot of decision making, it's absolute gold to me. So if you haven't tried standalone with your SP and your own one, definitely give it a go for that experience. If you are someone that struggles with overcomplicating things, it's really good for that. If you haven't bought an SP and you're watching this video, 100% recommend you get one if you're a beat maker. They're just so much fun. And like I say, once you embrace those limitations, you can just have an absolute blast with them. So thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget all the ways you can support me making these videos. Keep all the links in the description below. I do rely on you picking up things from my shop, etc., to keep me making these videos and keep me putting food on the table. So if you could take a look, I'd really appreciate it. I hope you like the new setup. Like I said, leave a comment below if you dig it. I'll do some more videos like this, and I'll be back with more content very soon.